My daughter's words cut through the room like a knife. Make a wish if you live that long. Rachel, my own flesh and blood, mocking me on my birthday. As the candle flickered, I realized it wasn't just her cruelty that stung, but the truth beneath it. She thought I was weak, so I closed my eyes, blew out the candle, and wished her right out of my will. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The birthday song arrived like a tidal wave, off-key, too loud, and drowning in artificial cheer. Elaine Porter sat at the end of the red leather booth at Las Palmas Grill, hands folded in her lap as 4 servers clapped their way toward her, balancing a cake covered in frosted roses. One candle flickered in the center. Just one. Happy birthday to you. The entire restaurant seemed to spin toward their table, heads turning, phones subtly raised, strangers watching like this was something sweet. Elaine kept her spine straight, 70. It sounded heavy in her ears like a bell toll, but she didn't let it show. Her smile was calm, eyes dry, not sentimental, just present. Then Rachel leaned in. Make a wish if you live that long. It was a whisper dressed in a smirk, a tone meant only for Elaine, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Caleb laughed, one quick shallow puff of air, not because it was funny, but because he always laughed when Rachel said something cruel. Olivia looked away instantly, her hands tightening on the folded napkin in her lap. Elaine didn't blink. She simply closed her eyes and blew out the candle. The restaurant erupted in applause. A waiter set the cake in front of her with forced enthusiasm, mumbling something about free dessert and cinnamon churros. Across the table, Rachel leaned back, satisfied. Her red lipstick barely smudged despite the sneer curling under it. You're quiet, Mom, she said, as if unaware of what she'd just done. Didn't expect all this attention, huh? I expected something, Elaine replied softly. She reached for her water glass, but not a eulogy. Rachel rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, it was a joke. But no one else was laughing now. Olivia excused herself to the bathroom. Caleb buried himself in his phone, pretending he hadn't just watched his wife twist the knife again. And Elaine, steady as ever, cut herself a small slice of cake and tasted it like it was any other Tuesday. Later that night, in the quiet of her dim kitchen, Elaine poured 2 cups of chamomile tea. Margaret Kane, her next-door neighbor and unapologetic truth-teller, sat across from her at the counter island, her hair tucked under a visor even at night. She really said that? Margaret asked, one eyebrow raised, her mouth pulled tight like she was trying not to explode. Word for word, Elaine replied, just as the candle hit its last inch. That wasn't a joke, Margaret said, leaning forward. That was a knife, and she enjoyed it. Elaine stirred honey into her tea, calm but not passive. I'm used to Rachel having her moments. Margaret snorted. That wasn't a moment. That was a glimpse into her playbook. They sat for a while, the tick of the wall clock marking time like a slow drip. The desert wind howled faintly outside, carrying with it the dust and dryness of another Phoenix summer night. Elaine reached under the counter and pulled out a navy blue notebook she hadn't used in years. She flipped it open but didn't write in it yet, just stared at the clean page. You thinking what I think you're thinking? Margaret asked. I'm thinking it's time I stop pretending it's not happening, Elaine said, her voice steady. And start documenting. Margaret gave a small, proud nod. Now that's the nurse I remember. Charted all at dawn, the kitchen filled with pale sunlight. Elaine stepped out to the front yard, barefoot, the stones warm underfoot already. The newspaper was still rolled in its plastic sleeve at the edge of the driveway. She reached for it, then froze. Voices floated from the other side of the hedge. Her daughter's voice. She's stubborn, but whatever. Once she's gone, we'll flip the house in months. Rachel's tone was casual, detached, like she was talking about flipping furniture on Craigslist. Elaine's breath caught. Caleb murmured something inaudible in return. Car keys jangled. Then a door slammed shut, Elaine stood there, heart cold against the rising Arizona heat, newspaper limp in her hand. The SUV pulled out of the driveway with a quiet growl of tires on pavement. She turned without a word, stepped back into the house, and put the coffee on. This time, she didn't wait for the mug to cool. Rachel had made a wish. Elaine had just heard what it really was. Elaine didn't cry. She didn't rage. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and a notebook that hadn't seen daylight since her husband died. The spine cracked as she opened it. Her pen moved like a scalpel, clean, precise, controlled. August 25th, 7:32 a.m. Phoenix, Arizona, witness, self, verbatim. Once she's gone, we'll flip the house in months. Spoken by Rachel Porter, overheard from hedge-bordering front yard. She paused, underlined the quote. Then flipped back to last night's entry, the birthday dinner, the insult over the candle. She added a date, time, location, cross-referenced both moments like puzzle pieces locking into place. She didn't need to imagine what was coming anymore. Her daughter had said it, twice. With witnesses the first time, without shame the second. The desert sun had already bleached the edges of the blinds. A fly buzzed against the window over the sink, searching for an exit it couldn't find. Footsteps creaked softly down the hallway. Elaine didn't look up until Olivia appeared in the doorway, arms wrapped around her middle. "I heard her," the girl whispered. At the hedge, Elaine closed the notebook and motioned to the seat across from her. Olivia sat down, slow and careful, like the floor might give out. "She didn't mean it," Olivia said, but her voice didn't have conviction. "Mom just talks." "She talks like I'm a transaction," Elaine said. Voice quiet but firm, like I've already been converted into equity. "I'm sorry," Olivia murmured. "I don't know. Why she's like this?" Elaine reached across the table, taking her granddaughter's hand. "You're not responsible for her." The girl's shoulders lowered a fraction, like someone had lifted a weight she didn't know she was carrying. Elaine squeezed her fingers gently before letting go. "She says things to Caleb too," Olivia added, "but he just shrugs it off." Elaine stood and poured her another glass of orange juice. Maybe he's used to letting her be the storm. Before Olivia could answer, the front door opened and closed. Caleb appeared in the hall, keys still in hand. "Hey, Olivia," he said, nodding at her. Then noticed Elaine. "I was going to check on the water heater." Elaine didn't move. "Did you hear her this morning?" Caleb hesitated. "I mean, not really. She was venting. She called my life a project she plans to flip." He shrugged, uncomfortable. "Rachel jokes too much. You know how she is." Elaine tilted her head. "You're not married to her jokes, Caleb. You're married to her choices." He looked away, just trying to keep the peace. Elaine walked to the cabinet, opened a drawer, and pulled out a sticky note. "Peace isn't silence. It's safety." He took that as a cue to leave. "Let me know if the water heater's still making noise." When the door clicked shut again, Margaret strolled in from the backyard, using her spare key like she owned stock in the house. She held 2 iced teas and a face full of suspicion. "You look like someone who's circling a plan," Margaret said, sliding one glass across the table. Elaine lifted the notebook slightly, revealing the handwritten pages beneath. Started building the paper trail. Margaret sat, her eyes scanning the handwriting. "About damn time. Don't wait for the fire to spread before you call it arson." Elaine tapped the pen against the margin. "I'm not calling anything yet. I'm documenting." Margaret's smile was tight and satisfied. "Just make sure when the match drops, they know who struck it." The afternoon passed in stretches of silence. Olivia read on the porch. Margaret left to check on her cat. Elaine refilled her coffee, once, then again. Every few hours she flipped open the notebook, reviewing what she'd written, not to obsess, but to stay sharp. At 4:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. Security alert, attempted login, unrecognized device on checking account. Elaine stared at the screen, the bank's name, the red flag icon, the timestamp. She hadn't initiated anything, and she hadn't shared her passwords with anyone. Her hand didn't shake. Not yet. She opened the banking app, changed her password, and added a 2-step verification. If Rachel was sniffing around the money, she wasn't waiting for a will, and Elaine wasn't waiting for her to succeed. She tapped into the alert and hit the fraud hotline, the phone ringing against her ear as her coffee cooled beside her. "Thank you for calling Desert Heritage Bank. Can I confirm your name and last 4 digits?" the voice chirped. Elaine provided them without pause. "Yes, we flagged a suspicious login attempt. Originated from a device in this ZIP code," the rep continued. "Do you recognize the email ending in Porter 39? Elaine didn't answer for a long beat. Her fingers curled slightly around the ceramic mug. "Yes," she said at last, voice clipped. "That's my daughter's." A pause. "Would you like to escalate this to our fraud unit?" "I'd like it documented and blocked." Immediately, they walked her through new authentication layers, text codes, a PIN reset, 2-factor approval. Elaine completed each one without comment. The rep offered a polite closing, but Elaine hung up before the words finished. She stared at the dark screen of her phone. Her own daughter hadn't waited for a conversation. Rachel had gone straight to the source, her accounts. In the living room, the blinds rattled faintly in the desert wind. Distant lawn mowers buzzed down the street. Elaine stood, retrieved the navy notebook, and turned to a fresh page. August 25th, 4:21 p.m. Event. Attempted unauthorized access to checking account. Password reset requested. Confirmed email used. Porter 39. Bank documentation pending. Fraud alert filed. She underlined the date 3 times. Outside, the porch creaked under a quiet step. Olivia poked her head through the screen door, eyes hesitant. "I saw your face," the teen said carefully. "Did something happen?" Elaine gave a nod, but not much else. "Mom tried something, didn't she?" Elaine didn't confirm it out loud, but her silence was its own answer. Olivia sank onto the porch step and hugged her knees. She wants everything now. She talks like it's already hers. "She's wrong," Elaine said simply. They sat like that for a moment. One woman, one girl, both caught between blood and boundaries. Then Olivia whispered, "You're changing things, aren't you?" Elaine didn't answer. She just turned her gaze to the driveway, where Rachel's SUV always sat, just a little crooked, like it didn't respect the lines. Later that evening, Caleb showed up again, this time under the pretense of dropping off leftover birthday cake. He stood in the kitchen awkwardly, holding a plastic container with slightly smeared frosting. "Rachel said she wanted you to have this, said she felt bad Elaine didn't reach for it. She tried to access my bank account." Caleb blinked. "What? You heard me. I'm sure she didn't mean. She probably misclicked or typed something wrong." Elaine raised an eyebrow, her face like stone. She requested a password reset. He set the cake down slowly, like it was made of glass. "She wouldn't steal from you." "No," Elaine replied. "Then what do you call attempting access to someone's funds without permission?" He didn't answer. He didn't even stay. He mumbled something and let himself out. Elaine stood at the kitchen counter long after the door shut, the plastic container still sitting untouched beside the sink. The cake inside had begun to sweat from the heat, the frosting sliding sideways like it couldn't hold its shape anymore. Margaret stopped by after dinner, stepping through the side door like usual. "Smells like guilt in here," she said, eyeing the cake. Elaine didn't laugh. "She went after my accounts." Margaret's face didn't change. "Then don't let her have them later." Elaine nodded, more to herself than anyone. "It's starting." "No," Margaret said, walking to the fridge and grabbing a soda. "It already started." "You're just finally documenting the battlefield." The house was quiet again. Elaine settled into her armchair with the notebook balanced on her lap, flipping through pages of her own words. Then the mail notification dinged on her phone. Subject: Notification of Family Caregiver Designation filed with Arizona Department of Health Services. Her hand tightened. Rachel had just declared herself her mother's caregiver, with the state. Without asking, Elaine didn't need to guess what came next. Her daughter was preparing to take more than money. Elaine stood at her kitchen counter, the notification email still open on her phone, the subject line pulsing like a threat. Family caregiver, designation filed, Rachel Porter as primary contact. Her stomach dropped, cold and slow like a stone sinking in water. There'd been no conversation, no warning, no offer to help. Just a form filed with the state, naming Rachel as her official primary caregiver, as if she were already halfway to a hospital bed. Elaine wasn't fragile, she wasn't forgetful. And she sure as hell wasn't under anyone's care. Outside, the late afternoon sun scorched the pavement, casting heat ripples along the sidewalk. Inside, the air was thick with tension and the scent of lemon polish from Elaine's freshly wiped counters. She reached for her phone again, not to call Rachel, but to call someone who might actually listen. Vega Law, this is Marianne, chirped the receptionist. I need to speak with Samuel Vega. It's urgent. Tell him it's Elaine Porter. By 4:15, she was seated in a narrow office cooled by humming ceiling fans and lined with shelves of case binders. Across the desk sat Samuel Vega, tie loosened, glasses perched low on his nose, posture alert, the kind of man who had seen too many adult children turn greedy too fast. She didn't even ask, Elaine said, sliding the email across the desk. I open my phone and suddenly she's registered as my caregiver. What does that even mean? Samuel adjusted his glasses, scanning the form. It means she's attempting to position herself as your legal decision maker. She can't access your medical records yet, but she's laying the groundwork, especially if she moves to file for guardianship later. Elaine's jaw clenched. She joked I'd die soon. Now she's planning for it. This isn't planning, Samuel said, tapping the form. This is exploitation, quiet, premeditated, and designed to look helpful. Happens more than people think. Elaine stared out the window, where a strip mall sign across the parking lot flickered in the heat. Check cashed while await. She felt like that sign, weathered, ignored, and one step from being unplugged. What do I do now? We start by protecting you, Samuel replied, opening a file drawer. Have you updated your will since your husband passed? Elaine shook her head. Then it's time. And we do it with precision. He began gathering forms, spreading them across the desk like playing cards. We'll revise the will, assign powers of attorney, and document everything in writing. If she's thinking long game, we beat her to it. Elaine met his eyes. Do I have to tell her? Samuel gave a faint, knowing smile. No, miss. Porter. That's the best part. She left the office with a folder of documents tucked under her arm and a sense of purpose tucked inside her spine. Margaret was already waiting at her kitchen table when she got home, sipping iced coffee and slicing a green apple with a paring knife. Well, Margaret asked without looking up, did the man in the tie talk you off the cliff? He talked me to a lawyer's office, Elaine said, setting the folder on the table with a satisfying thump. Margaret's eyebrows rose. That's the sound of a woman done playing defense. Elaine poured herself a fresh glass of water. If Rachel wants to file things behind my back, then I'll sign papers she'll never see coming. Margaret nodded approvingly, then gestured with the knife. Plan faster, Elaine. She's circling. They went through the folder together. Will revision forms, healthcare directives, financial locks. Every signature was a brick in a wall. Elaine's pen didn't pause once. Later that evening, while Margaret left to walk her dog, Elaine stepped outside to grab the mail. The air had cooled just enough to breathe. The dusk, casting long shadows across her front yard. She reached into the mailbox and froze. Rachel was standing at the side of the house, by the recycling bin, a bundle of envelopes in her hand. Her face tightened like a lid being sealed. Didn't know you were home, Rachel said flatly. I live here, Elaine replied. You don't. Rachel looked down at the envelopes. One of them, Elaine's name, typed neatly in the return corner, was already opened. Elaine didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Rachel dropped the stack back into the mailbox, brushed past her without apology, and got into her SUV, slamming the door harder than necessary. Elaine stood on the gravel path, fingers tightening around the mailbox door. The envelope flapped lightly in the breeze, sliced clean across the top. She was done waiting for more signs. Elaine's pen moved like it had a purpose no one could erase. Every stroke across the page carried the weight of truth, memory, and betrayal, but more than that, it carried intention. Samuel Vega sat across from her at his conference table, his laptop open and voice low as he read through the document line by line. He wasn't a man who wasted words, and that made every clause feel more permanent, more real. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting the room in a harsh clarity that suited what Elaine was about to do. She was rewriting the future, one signature at a time. Rachel's name had been there once, decades ago, written without hesitation, back when Elaine believed that love was enough to guarantee legacy. Now, that name was gone, struck from the will like it had never belonged there. Elaine kept her voice calm. She didn't just mock my birthday, Sam. She mocked my life. She turned it into an inheritance countdown. Samuel nodded. This version protects everything. Olivia will inherit the estate in full when she turns 25. Before that, a trustee, independent of Rachel, manages it. And the house? Goes into a living trust immediately. Rachel can't touch it. Not now. Not later. Elaine inhaled deeply, then flipped to the next section. And the library? 25% of your remaining assets will fund a local literacy program under your name, the Porter Reading Fund. I've confirmed it with the Phoenix Public Library Foundation. Elaine smiled, small and proud. Good. Books raised me. Might as well raise someone else, too. Samuel tapped his keyboard, then turned the screen to her. One more thing. I've added a no contest clause. If Rachel tries to dispute this in probate, she gets nothing. 0. No appeals, no loopholes. Perfect. As she signed, Margaret stood behind her, arms crossed, reading over her shoulder like a hawk. She didn't speak until Elaine finished. That's the sound of a fuse, not a signature, Margaret said, with a smirk. She'll lose her damn mind when she finds out. Elaine capped the pen with a quiet snap. Her wish won't come true. Not now. Not ever. They moved to the notary desk. Elaine signed under the notary's watchful eye. Margaret signed as witness. Samuel finished the file with a click of the mouse, saving it to an encrypted drive, printing copies into a folder labeled Porter, Elaine, Final Will and Testament. It was done, not just legally, but emotionally. Elaine walked out of the law office lighter than she'd felt in weeks. The sun beat down hard on the sidewalk, but her steps were steady. Her breath came easier. She wasn't afraid of Rachel anymore. Not her words, not her tricks, not her schemes. She pulled into her driveway just as the first gust of wind kicked up dry leaves from the sidewalk. The air smelled like sunburnt pavement and scorched citrus from the neighbor's tree. Inside, she barely had time to set her purse down before the door flung open. Rachel stormed in without knocking. I know, she snapped. Her heels clacked sharply across the tile. I know you're cutting me out. Elaine turned slowly, unsurprised. So much for hello. Rachel ignored it. Caleb saw the paperwork on the passenger seat in your car. Porter will. Final draft. I'm not stupid. No, Elaine said coolly. Just entitled. Rachel's face flushed red. You're just going to erase me. Like I don't matter? After everything I've done? What exactly have you done, Rachel? Elaine interrupted, voice even. Mocked me in public, filed paperwork behind my back, tried to break into my accounts, read my mail. Rachel hesitated. The silence between them was thick and mean. I'm your daughter, she said at last. That should count for something. Elaine's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It did. For years. Then you turned it into a transaction. Rachel stepped closer, eyes sharp. You can't just write me out. I already did. Rachel's hands curled into fists. Her mouth opened, but whatever venom she'd planned to spit froze in her throat. She stared at her mother for a long, bitter second, then turned and slammed the door behind her. The house rattled, But Elaine didn't flinch. She returned to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and sipped it like nothing had happened. Because something had, and it was only just beginning. The front door was still vibrating in its frame when Elaine sat back down at the kitchen table. Her pulse was steady. Her tea, untouched during the confrontation, had gone lukewarm. She sipped it anyway. Across the room, Olivia hovered in the hallway, phone clutched to her chest like a shield. "You got all of it?" Elaine asked without looking up. "From the moment she accused you of cutting her out." Olivia nodded. Her voice was loud. Elaine opened her notebook and began writing again, the pen gliding across the paper with cool efficiency. August 26th, 4:48 p.m. Second verbal confrontation. Witness: Olivia Porter. Incident recorded. Rachel Porter confirmed awareness of updated will. "She's going to escalate," Olivia said quietly. "She already is." Elaine closed the notebook and turned to her granddaughter. "Email the video to Mr. Vega. He'll know what to do with it." Olivia hesitated. "Are you scared?" Elaine's smile was thin, but true. "Not anymore." The house fell back into its afternoon hush. Outside, a cicada whined in the brittle orange tree. Inside, the refrigerator hummed like a sleeping animal. 2 hours later, Rachel returned, but this time, she didn't scream. Elaine was in the garden clipping back the bougainvillea when she heard the familiar thrum of Rachel's SUV pulling into the driveway. She kept trimming until the footsteps crunched over gravel behind her. "Mom," Rachel said, voice calm, too calm. Elaine didn't turn. "You're trespassing. I want to talk." "You did that already." "With volume, I mean seriously." Elaine clipped one last branch, then finally faced her daughter. Rachel's tone had changed, but her face hadn't, still tight, still calculating. "You think this will hold up in court?" Rachel asked, arms crossed. "You're referring to the will?" "To the betrayal," Rachel hissed. "You're giving a teenager the estate and throwing your own daughter out like trash. Olivia doesn't know what to do with all that. Olivia knows respect." "That's more than I can say for you." Rachel's eyes flicked to the window, where she knew Olivia might be watching. "You're manipulating her." Elaine didn't flinch. "You manipulated paperwork behind my back. You tried to take control of my care, my accounts, and my name." "Don't talk to me about manipulation." Rachel's mouth flattened. "Then you leave me no choice." Elaine said nothing. She just turned and walked back to the porch, leaving Rachel standing there in the heat, cheeks burning. That night, Margaret showed up with a slice of pecan pie in one hand and a printout in the other. "Got this from my friend Marlene at the clerk's office. Thought you should see it before the lawyer calls." Elaine took the paper and scanned the top line. "Petition for adult guardianship, claiming incapacity due to age and cognitive decline." She blinked once, then again. "She really did it," Elaine said softly. "She's trying to take legal control of my life." Margaret took a bite of pie like she wasn't surprised. "Told you." "Give her enough rope." Elaine sat down, paper still in hand. The words blurred a little, but not from fear. From anger sharpened into clarity. The next morning, Samuel Vega's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "I received the video. And the court filing. I need you in the office today." Elaine didn't ask why. She knew. Rachel had changed tactics again, this time aiming for control under the guise of care. "She's framing it like I'm declining," Elaine said. "She's framing it like you're already gone," Samuel replied. But she underestimated one thing. Elaine waited. "You're not the only one documenting things anymore. Olivia's video, paired with your notes, is damning." Elaine looked out the window as a neighbor waved, oblivious. "Let's prepare for court." Samuel's voice was calm and certain. "Let's win." Elaine reached for her notebook and opened to a fresh page. At the top she wrote, "If she wants to take me down legally, I'll bury her in facts." The courtroom was quiet, but not in the way that brought calm. It was the kind of quiet that warned storms were about to speak. A sterile clock ticked above the judge's bench, and the air reeked faintly of floor wax and old paper. Elaine Porter sat at the respondent's table, her posture straight, her expression composed. A pen in hand, though there was nothing left to sign. Across the aisle, Rachel wore a navy blazer that still had the price tag thread hanging from the hem. She looked polished, practiced, but her jaw flexed every time the judge glanced her way. Docket 17B, the clerk called. Petitioner Rachel Porter versus Respondent Elaine Porter. Petition for adult guardianship based on alleged cognitive decline. Elaine's heart didn't race. It had the right to, but it didn't. She glanced to her right, where Samuel Vega sat calmly flipping through a binder labeled Porter, Defense Evidence. Rachel rose when prompted. Your Honor, she began, this petition isn't about resentment or revenge. It's about concern. My mother is 70. She's been showing signs of confusion, paranoia, and increasingly erratic behavior. She refuses help. She's rewriting her will to favor a teenager and giving away property like it's a garage sale. Elaine didn't blink. Rachel continued, her voice syrupy. She's isolating herself, mistrusting family, and, frankly, making unsafe financial decisions. I filed the caregiver designation months ago because I saw this coming. Judge Reyes, a man in his late 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a face that gave away nothing, looked toward Samuel. Mr. Vegas stood, adjusted his cuffs. Your Honor, we reject every word of the petition and have evidence to counter all claims. We also requested a third-party medical evaluation, as the court ordered. The report has been submitted. Judge Reyes nodded. Let's hear from the evaluator. A woman in a gray pantsuit stepped forward, Dr. Leslie Miner. She spoke without looking at notes. I evaluated Ms. Elaine Porter in her home over a 2-hour visit. I administered memory recall, decision-making assessments, and a series of motor and cognitive tasks. She turned to face the bench. In my professional opinion, Ms. Porter is lucid, organized, independent, and fully capable of managing her affairs. There are no indications of decline. Rachel shifted in her seat, her hand clenching the armrest. Dr. Min didn't stop. In fact, she demonstrated above-average retention and had clear documentation of her financial and legal plans, including a meticulously maintained record of her daughter's behavior toward her. Samuel stood again, calm and crisp. Your Honor, I also have a copy of a video recorded during a confrontation in which the petitioner, Ms. Porter's daughter, acknowledges her exclusion from the will and attempts to intimidate the respondent. Rachel sprang to her feet. That video was taken out of context. Judge Reyes raised a hand. You'll have your turn, Ms. Porter. Samuel clicked a remote. The courtroom monitor lit up with a grainy hallway video. Rachel's voice filled the room. You can't just write me out. I already did. The silence that followed was sharp. Judge Reyes looked down at the petition, then back at Rachel. Miss Porter, the law does not grant you guardianship over a parent simply because you don't like their decisions. He tapped the gavel gently. Petition denied. Elaine exhaled, not relief exactly, more like confirmation of what she already knew. She rose and gathered her things, offering a quiet thank you to Samuel. Rachel stood frozen, her face pale now, lips tight. As the courtroom emptied, she leaned in, her voice low enough for only Elaine to hear. Then I'll take you down another way. Elaine didn't flinch. She didn't reply, but Samuel heard it. He paused, turned back just long enough to meet Rachel's eyes. That threat just got noted. Might want to dial it back. Rachel walked out of the courtroom with her heels clicking too fast, like her plan was falling apart faster than she could rebuild it. Elaine tucked the court ruling into her bag, her fingers brushing over the words, guardianship denied, respondent independent. But she knew Rachel wasn't done. Not yet. The hallway was dim, lit only by a shaft of sunset slicing through the living room blinds. Olivia stood still as a shadow, holding her phone low, screen dimmed, camera rolling. Just ahead, her mother's voice leaked out from the kitchen, low, angry, simmering. I don't care what the judge said, Rachel muttered. If she thinks she won, she's dumber than I thought. I'll find another way. I'll drain her dry before she even realizes what's missing. She wasn't talking to anyone. She was talking at the kitchen window, glass of wine in hand, pacing in circles like a caged wolf. Her words bled frustration, spite, intent. I gave her decades of my life, and now she's going to leave me with nothing? Fine, then she'll get nothing too. She'll die with her name on a bench and no one at the funeral but a kid and a neighbor with arthritis. Olivia's hand shook slightly, but she held the phone steady. Every word mattered now. She didn't speak when Rachel left the kitchen. She slipped into her room, locked the door behind her, and uploaded the audio straight to her grandmother's private email folder. Subject: Mom's threat, recorded today. The next morning, Elaine found the file waiting in her inbox, along with Olivia's short note. It was just me and her in the house, time-stamped. I didn't edit anything. Elaine sat very still at the breakfast table, listening to the recording with headphones on. The words cut deeper through audio than they had in person. No yelling, no insults, just cold certainty. She opened her binder, now thick with dates, quotes, and court documents, and slipped the transcript behind a fresh tab marked Audio Evidence. Then she dialed Samuel Vega. By noon, he had filed an emergency petition for a restraining order. That recording, Samuel said, closing his briefcase. It's not just a bad look. It's intent, malicious, calculated. A judge won't ignore that Elaine didn't smile, but the lines around her mouth settled into something firm. I'm not afraid of her anymore, she said. Margaret arrived just after lunch with a lemon tart and a sharp opinion. She read the transcript out loud from across the counter. She actually said drain her dry, Margaret scoffed. She's icing her own damn cake at this point. She thinks no one's watching, Elaine said, sipping iced tea. But Olivia's been watching the whole time. Margaret cut a thick slice of tart and slid it across the plate. That girl's got steel in her spine. You did right by her. That afternoon, they sat on the porch, the Arizona sun bending low, casting golden streaks across the stucco walls. The air was thick with distant barbecue smoke and the faint hum of cicadas. Elaine's phone buzzed in her lap. Court notification. Temporary restraining order granted. Rachel Porter is legally restricted from contacting or entering the property of Elaine Porter for a period of 30 days, pending hearing. Elaine held the screen out to Margaret. Good, Margaret said. You gave her rope. She hung herself. But peace is rarely permanent, especially with Rachel. That evening, Olivia returned from the community center holding a wrinkled sheet of paper. This was posted on the neighborhood board by the mailboxes, she said, dropping it on the table. Elaine unfolded it, a flyer, printed in color, advertising estate liquidation, furniture and decor, mid-century modern, great condition. Contact rporter.azsales@outlook.com. Elaine scanned the seahurt, photos, her dining room chairs, her antique coffee table, her late husband's leather recliner, still with the Arizona Diamondbacks throw, folded on the arm. Her breath caught, but not from shock, from fury. She's selling my furniture, Elaine said flatly. Without permission. Online, Olivia looked stunned. How would she even get pictures? Elaine was already walking, down the hall, into the guest room where Rachel had stayed off and on for weeks before the court hearings. She flung the closet doors open. Half the shelves were empty. She took photos before she left, Elaine muttered. Maybe more than that. In the corner of the closet, the cedar chest was missing. Elaine turned slowly, jaw set. Rachel hadn't just threatened ruin. She'd started the sale. Elaine stood in the guest room, staring at the empty shelf where her cedar chest used to be. The closet door hung half open, revealing the hollow spaces Rachel left behind. Faint dust outlines marked where the boxes had been. It wasn't just a few items, it was methodical. She turned back to Olivia, who was frozen in the doorway, the flyer still clutched in her hand. She took them, Elaine said, voice low. She didn't just take pictures. She stole the damn furniture. Olivia's mouth parted. Grandma, do we call the police now? Elaine didn't answer. She strode down the hallway, her feet firm against the tile. She sat at her kitchen table, opened her laptop, and typed AZ Vintage Flip Queen into the Facebook Marketplace search bar. The page loaded, and with it, proof, her dining set, already marked sold. The leather recliner, listed at $425. The mirror from her bedroom. Vintage walnut with beveled edge, it said, listed 2 days ago. The cedar chest was still active, tagged as porch pickup only. Porch pickup from where, she muttered, clicking through. Rachel had used a masked location tag, but Elaine recognized the background in the photos. The wall, the flooring, the patio chairs in the reflection of the mirror. It was the rental house Rachel had leased after moving out. Elaine took a slow, steady breath. Then she began collecting evidence, screenshots of each listing, timestamps, seller ID, email handles. She even screen recorded the scrolling, her mouse highlighting each price, each item, each theft. By the time she called Samuel Vega, her folder was airtight. She sold the furniture, he asked, incredulous. While under a restraining order? She listed it before the order hit, Elaine replied, but it's still mine. She had no permission. I've got pictures from inside my house and listings with matching backgrounds. Same furniture, same details. I'll handle it. This isn't just theft. It's financial exploitation under state law. The phrase landed heavily. Not just family betrayal, but criminal exploitation. Something Arizona courts took seriously. That evening, Officer Martinez from the local precinct knocked on Elaine's door. We located the email address tied to the online sales, he said. It's linked directly to a device registered to Rachel Porter. We've documented the IP address. She's liable. Elaine handed him a manila folder. This has every listing, plus before and after photos of the items in my home. He took the folder, impressed. You built a better case than most lawyers. No, she said calmly. I just pay attention. By the next morning, Rachel was officially under investigation. Elaine found Caleb standing on her porch around noon, shoulders sagging like he'd aged a decade overnight. He wasn't holding flowers or cake this time, just his car keys and a face full of shame. I didn't know she'd go this far, he said. She was always going to. I thought she was angry, just venting. Elaine leaned against the doorframe. She stole a cedar chest. You don't do that by accident. Caleb looked like he wanted to apologize, but there was nothing left to repair. She used to talk about how she'd put things in order when you passed, he said quietly. I thought it was just grieving in advance. I didn't realize she was planning a liquidation. She wasn't grieving, Elaine replied. She was calculating. Caleb stared down at his shoes. If there's anything I can do to... There isn't. The screen door clicked shut behind him. Elaine didn't watch him leave. That afternoon, Olivia burst through the front door holding the Arizona Sun Tribune in both hands. It made the paper, she said, breathless. Elaine unfolded it slowly. Daughter exploits widowed mother, sells family furniture online, felony charges, filed. Below the headline was a photo of Rachel in sunglasses, caught mid-step outside the courthouse. The article detailed the restraining order, the online listings, and the confirmed police report. Neighbors would read this, so would her church ladies, the library board, Caleb's co-workers. Margaret showed up 15 minutes later, holding the same paper, already creased. Damn, she said, setting it on the counter. She thought she could cash you out. You cashed her out instead. Elaine folded the article and placed it in her binder. She didn't just lose the money. She lost her mask. Margaret nodded, then paused. You think she's done? Elaine glanced out the window toward the street. No, she said. She's cornered now. And people like Rachel don't disappear quietly. And just like that, the real war began. Elaine barely made it to the sidewalk before she heard it, the whispers, not the loud kind, but the subtle ones, spoken just behind sunglasses and tight-lipped smiles. Two women from the next cul-de-sac strolled by with coffee cups and pointed glances, their hushed tones unmistakable. She's the one from the article, right? The daughter? Total snake. She tried to sell her mother's furniture like it was an estate sale. Elaine didn't stop walking, didn't flinch, just kept heading toward the community garden like she hadn't heard a thing. But inside, something icy and still curled up like a satisfied cat. By the time she reached the raised beds of tomatoes and peppers, 3 more neighbors had waved, sympathetically, awkwardly, some even a little reverently. One man offered to carry her watering can. Another slipped a fresh lemon from his yard into her basket. No words exchanged. Elaine hadn't asked for vindication, but it arrived anyway, printed in bold ink and read over morning coffee across the whole neighborhood. Back at the house, Margaret sat on the porch swing with her tablet balanced across her knees, scrolling through Facebook. She's dropped out of 2 local groups already, she said, her tone light but edged. No more comments on the desert parenting circle. No potluck RSVPs either. Rachel's officially ghosting the suburbs. She's hiding, Olivia said, curled up in the porch chair with her shoes off. I heard Caleb's been going to church alone. He doesn't even sit with her anymore. Elaine placed her sun hat on the table and untied her gardening gloves slowly. He's distancing himself, probably trying to salvage what's left of his own name. He can try, Margaret said. But when the headline includes exploits widowed mother, you're radioactive. Even the HOA board's whispering about whether to formally ban her from events. Olivia smirked. She's losing everything, not just the inheritance, people, image. The illusion Elaine didn't reply right away. She just watched a hummingbird dart past the feeder, its wings flickering so fast they blurred against the desert sky. She built her life on assumptions, Elaine finally said. That I'd stay quiet, that I'd cave, that the world would believe her first. Margaret nodded. Your wish came true already, Elaine tilted her head. It wasn't a wish. It was a plan inside. The phone rang. Olivia answered, then handed it to Elaine. It's Samuel. Elaine took it, slipping into the kitchen as the screen door creaked behind her. Rachel's attorney just contacted the clerk's office, Samuel said without preamble. She's appealing. Elaine exhaled slowly. On what grounds? Claiming due process violations. She says your will changes were coerced by Olivia and me, that you're being manipulated. Elaine rolled her eyes. The girl who said make a wish if you live that long thinks I'm being manipulated. She's hired new counsel. Local firm, aggressive reputation. They like spectacle. Elaine paced across the tile. The late afternoon sun lit the countertops in slanted gold. What does this mean for the final hearing? It's still on, Samuel said, but now we'll be fighting to get the restraining order extended and shut down her appeal. I'll prep Olivia. Her testimony's even more important now. Elaine's gaze drifted to the dining room, to the empty space where the cedar chest once stood. The room felt more hers than ever before, because it had been fought for. She's trying to twist the story, Elaine said. Again. And this time, Samuel replied. We're ready before she speaks. She hung up and returned to the porch, face unreadable. Margaret looked up. Another tantrum. No, Elaine said. A strategy. She's appealing. Hired new legal teeth. Olivia sat upright. She's not done. Elaine sat down, unbothered. She's circling the drain. That's all an appeal is when the evidence is this strong. Margaret lifted her glass. Then let her spin. By the time she hits bottom, she'll be too dizzy to crawl back up. Elaine didn't toast. She didn't need to. She'd already won the truth. Now it was time to make it official. Elaine sat in the courtroom, her fingers resting lightly on the polished oak of the defense table, notebook closed beside her like a silent witness. Across the aisle, Rachel's new attorney, a younger man in a cobalt suit with 2 white teeth, paced confidently before the bench. His voice was polished, his tone rehearsed. Your Honor, he began, this case has been blown out of proportion. We're not talking about malice here. We're talking about a miscommunication between a concerned daughter and an aging mother. a family matter twisted into a legal war. Rachel sat behind him with a carefully controlled expression, her eyes rimmed with just enough makeup to seem delicate, but not damaged. She didn't look at Elaine. She looked past her, as if pretending this wasn't about her at all. The courtroom was too warm. The air smelled faintly of old upholstery and printer toner. A fan buzzed softly in the back corner. Judge Reyes leaned back in his chair, hands folded. Samuel Vega stood. "We respectfully disagree." He handed over a new folder of evidence, each page marked, tabbed, time-stamped. "What's inside," he said, "is not hearsay or assumption. It is a pattern, recorded statements, emails, bank activity logs, property theft documentation, audio threats, even a flyer listing the respondent's personal belongings for sale while she was still alive and living in her home." Rachel's attorney tried to interject, but Samuel kept going. "We also have video of a confrontation where Miss Porter, now the appellant, acknowledges she was cut out of the will and responds with verbal intimidation." He turned slightly and nodded to the second row. "Your Honor, we'd also like to call Olivia Porter for a brief testimony." Olivia stepped forward, 17 now, but poised. She took the oath with steady hands, then faced the courtroom with more composure than most adults. "She told my grandma to make a wish if you live that long," Olivia said. "She said it in front of me, my dad, and a table full of strangers. That was the night everything shifted." Rachel shifted in her seat. "She laughed," Olivia continued, "but it wasn't funny. It was calculated. That wasn't a joke. That was a threat." The courtroom was silent. Samuel gave a small nod and motioned that they were done. Rachel's attorney stood again, but the momentum had shifted. His polished demeanor cracked slightly as he tried to pivot. "Let's not confuse poor judgment with criminal intent. This is still a mother and daughter, and mistakes were made, on both sides. What my client wants is reconciliation, not exclusion." Judge Reyes finally spoke, voice flat. "She stole furniture and sold it online." A beat of silence. He tapped his gavel once, soft but final. "Appeal denied. Guardianship remains permanently closed. All assets and decision-making stay with Miss Elaine Porter." Rachel visibly tensed. Her fingers clawed into her handbag like she could shred the verdict out of the air. The judge continued, unfazed. "The temporary restraining order is hereby extended to 6 months, with further review pending behavior. Miss Porter, you will have no right to contact, approach, or manage any affairs related to your mother." Rachel stood suddenly, lips parted like she might speak, but she said nothing. Her attorney tugged at her sleeve, quietly urging her back into her seat. Elaine stood without a word, notebook still unopened, and left the courtroom surrounded by a calm that had nothing to do with victory. Margaret was waiting outside, leaning on the hood of her car like she'd been tailgating the drama. "Well?" she asked. Elaine opened her purse, pulled out the court slip, and handed it over. Margaret scanned it and gave a low, satisfied grunt. "Good. No more surprises from that rattlesnake." "No," Elaine said. "Now it's time to build what can't be contested." That evening, back at the house, Elaine placed a call to Samuel and requested one final piece of documentation, something Rachel couldn't tear down, twist, or inherit. "I'd like to start a trust," she said, "the kind no one can undo." She walked to the hallway closet, pulled down an old fireproof lockbox, and opened it. Inside were deeds, account summaries, and a photograph of her and Olivia reading together in the library. And this time, her legacy wouldn't be written in pencil. Elaine's signature glided across the final page with quiet finality. No trembling, no hesitation, just ink on paper sealing a life's worth of decisions. The smell of parchment, toner, and lemon-scented polish filled Samuel Vega's office, where sunlight spilled through the blinds in fractured stripes. On the desk sat a thick stack of documents. The binder's spine read, "Porter Irrevocable Trust." She set the pen down and leaned back in the chair, the weight of the moment finally exhaling from her shoulders. "Is that it?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Samuel nodded with professional calm. "It's done. The trust is officially live and funded. Olivia is sole beneficiary when she turns 25. In the meantime, the trustee will manage the assets to protect her from outside interference." Elaine looked down at the names in bold type. Olivia Porter. The Phoenix Public Library Foundation. Not a trace of Rachel. "And the clause about Rachel?" she asked. Samuel slid a secondary file across the desk. "Explicitly excluded. She's not entitled to assent. Even if she tries to sue, this trust structure is bulletproof. It can't be cracked without a time machine." Elaine allowed herself a rare smile, one of quiet satisfaction, not triumph. He flipped the cover shut. "You didn't just win, Elaine. You rewrote the rules outside." Tires hissed along the hot pavement, and a palm tree swayed listlessly in the breeze. It was the kind of Phoenix day where heat settled into your bones and made everything feel slow, except her thoughts, which felt clearer than they had in years. She glanced at the gold-plated nameplate on Samuel's desk, then up at him. "Thank you for every piece of this." He nodded once, then leaned forward slightly. "You gave a kid a future, and you gave yourself peace. That's no small thing." As Elaine stepped outside into the sun, Margaret's Honda pulled up to the curb with the windows already down. "Well?" Margaret asked, sunglasses pushed halfway up her nose. Elaine held up the binder. "Trust is finalized." Margaret let out a whoop loud enough to startle a jogger. "Now that's a real birthday wish." They drove to the cafe around the corner, where the AC was just strong enough to keep the table napkins from sweating. Margaret ordered an iced chai. Elaine ordered black coffee, same as always. "You did it," Margaret said. "She can't touch you anymore." Elaine stirred her coffee slowly, watching the cream dissolve into the swirl. "It's not about her. It's about protecting what matters." Margaret raised her glass. "To choosing who deserves your years." Elaine tapped her mug to it. "Exactly." That evening, Olivia curled up beside her on the couch, barefoot, wearing one of Elaine's old cardigans. The TV was on low, playing a rerun they weren't really watching. "I heard you signed the trust," Olivia said. Elaine nodded. "It's all settled. You and the library are safe." Olivia looked up. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Elaine said, "but I wanted to. Because you see people. You don't strip them down for parts." The two of them sat in silence for a while, surrounded by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking wall clock. Peace had finally moved into the house, not loud or dramatic, just steady, like it had unpacked and was ready to stay. Later, while Elaine folded towels in the laundry room, a soft knock came at the front door. Olivia opened it, blinked at the delivery guy, and signed for the envelope. "It's certified," she called out. "From Rachel." Elaine stood at the kitchen island. Rachel's letter unfolded across the granite like a body on an autopsy table. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Dramatic slants, soft loops, too much pressure on the periods. The words were dressed in regret, but beneath the perfume and theatrics, Elaine could hear the same old echo. Entitlement, pretending to be sorrow. "I've lost everything. I miss Olivia. I made mistakes. I'm still your daughter." Not a word about the threats, not a line about the stolen furniture, not a single acknowledgement of the legal war she started. Just a plea to press reset, as if betrayal could be wiped away with one envelope and a few smeared ink lines. Elaine didn't cry. She didn't even sigh. She simply folded the letter back in thirds, slid it into the original envelope, and walked to the cabinet drawer. Inside, beneath extra stamps and a roll of packing tape, was a thick red Sharpie. She turned the envelope over and in bold, deliberate strokes wrote 2 words: "Return to sender." Behind her, Olivia stood quietly by the kitchen door, having read the letter earlier with a tight jaw and folded arms. She watched her grandmother seal the envelope and place it gently into the outgoing mail tray. That's the best answer, Olivia said. Elaine looked up, calm and sure. Some words don't deserve breath. The next morning, Samuel met them at the local strip mall law office for one final step. His suit was crisp, but his smile had softened. This, he said, holding up a cream-colored envelope sealed with an official notary sticker, is the final estate packet. Everything is certified: the trust, the will, the no contest clause, and Rachel's permanent exclusion. He handed it to Elaine, who took it like one might take a long-awaited key. No loopholes? She asked. None, he replied. She can't touch a penny, a chair, or a page. Margaret, seated beside Olivia with her usual travel mug in hand, grinned. She can't blow out your flame now, Lane. Elaine turned toward the window, where the Arizona sun poured through the blinds in fractured stripes. I already did, she said. The office grew quiet, a different kind of silence now, one not born of tension or waiting, but peace, completion, vindication. As they exited, a breeze picked up across the asphalt. The smell of desert sage drifted from the landscape planter out front. For the first time in months, Elaine walked slowly, not out of caution, but because she could. They drove straight from the law office to the downtown library. It was Olivia's idea, something about a surprise, something about timing. Margaret played chauffeur, chattering about her bingo winnings as she navigated side streets. Elaine didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. There was trust now, real trust, earned and tested. The library was quiet when they arrived. A group of volunteers stood near the side wing, heads bent over a new installation. Olivia took Elaine's hand and led her across the tiled lobby, where the smell of books and polished wood wrapped around them like a hug. Come on, Olivia whispered. Elaine turned the corner and stopped. A bronze plaque, mounted on the wall just above a newly finished reading nook, glinted under the recessed lights, engraved in thick serif font. The Elaine Porter Reading Room, in honor of a life that protected stories, family, and the truth. Elaine blinked. Once, twice. Behind her, Margaret sniffled audibly. You didn't just write a will, honey. You wrote history. Volunteers clapped softly. A few library staff came forward with cookies and coffee. Someone offered to take a photo. Elaine smiled, nodded, but stayed still, taking it in. There was no portrait, no dramatic quote, just her name, clean, permanent, unshakable. I told you your wish came true, Olivia said beside her, but I don't think it was about money. It was about this. Elaine squeezed her granddaughter's hand. It was about choosing what gets remembered. She looked once more at the plaque, at the words that couldn't be contested, twisted, or sold. And just as she turned to leave, a librarian stepped forward with a small wrapped package. This arrived this morning, she said. Said it was from Rachel Porter. We didn't open it. Elaine took the box and turned it in her hands, her fingers brushing the label. It wasn't heavy. It rattled faintly. Inside, a card was tucked under the twine. One last apology. Please just open it. Elaine raised an eyebrow, then slipped the box into her purse, unread. The plaque wasn't the only thing being sealed that day. The library smelled like cedar shelves, lemon oil, and ink on fresh paper, permanent things. Outside, Phoenix baked under a late morning sun. But inside, the room was cool, filled with quiet murmurs and the soft click of shoes on tile. People were gathering in the northeast wing, just past the biography stacks, where a ribbon was strung across a new reading nook framed in warm oak. Elaine stood near the back, her hands clasped loosely in front of her, watching as a small crowd formed. Librarians, trustees, a few community members, and volunteers who knew her not by gossip, but by gratitude. She wore a soft gray blouse and slacks. Nothing flashy, but her posture held something regal. There was nothing to prove anymore, just something to mark. Olivia hovered at her side, practically bouncing. Her grin hadn't faded since they arrived. You okay? She whispered. Elaine glanced at her. I'm not used to being the event. Well, Olivia said, get used to it. They're here for you. Margaret stood behind them, leaning on her cane with a smirk that could slice tile. You're the plaque, Lane. They better be here for you. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman from the library board stepped up to the podium, her voice clear and warm through the small speaker system. Today we honor a member of this community who has spent her life in quiet service, first as a nurse, then as a neighbor, and now as someone who's ensured generations to come will always have a place to read, to imagine, and to grow. Please help me welcome Elaine Porter. Applause filled the room, not thunderous, but full, genuine, unforced. Elaine stepped forward slowly, her heels echoing softly against the polished floor. She stood beside the draped plaque, her fingers resting lightly on the velvet covering. Thank you, she began, voice steady. This space means more than just books. It means safety. It means second chances. I built this for the girl I used to be, quiet, overlooked, hungry for stories, and for the girl standing beside me now who never stopped believing in me. She turned to Olivia. Their eyes met. Some people believe legacy is something you inherit, Elaine continued. I believe it's something you choose. And today, I chose this. She pulled the cord. The fabric fell away to reveal the plaque, mounted in bronze, sunlight catching the fresh etching, the Elaine Porter Reading Room. For those who still believe in turning the page. The room erupted in applause again, louder this time, layered with soft whoops and camera clicks. Margaret wiped at the corner of her eye and muttered, "Damn dust in the air." Samuel Vega stepped forward and offered Elaine a handshake, then leaned in. That, he said, nodding at the plaque, is how you outlive a mockery. Elaine smiled. That was my real wish. Reporters took photos, children peeked over shoulders to read the words, and a young girl tugged at her mother's hand, pointing toward the cozy window seat now filled with pillows and donated books. The air buzzed with joy, not spectacle. Elaine felt it in her chest like warmth after rain, earned, not gifted. As the ceremony quieted down and people dispersed toward refreshments, Olivia pulled Elaine aside and handed her a wrapped book, tied in navy ribbon. "What's this?" Elaine asked, puzzled. "Open it." She untied the ribbon and lifted the cover. Inside was a photo album. The first page held a picture of the two of them planting desert flowers in the backyard. The next, a still from the day Olivia testified in court. Then, one of the reading room under construction. Below it, Olivia's handwriting, new memories, not inherited, chosen. Elaine blinked back the sting behind her eyes. "I figured we needed a new kind of history," Olivia said. Elaine shut the album gently. "We're writing it already." But before she could turn the page, a flash of movement caught her eye across the room. Someone standing just outside the glass entrance, not coming in, just watching. Rachel, hair pulled back, no makeup, a posture that said she didn't belong here anymore. Their eyes met. Rachel held something, a book maybe, but made no move to come inside. And then, just as silently as she'd appeared, she turned and disappeared down the walkway, leaving only the echo of her absence behind. The evening sun stretched across the living room, spilling amber light over the photo album on Elaine's lap. Each page turned with a soft whisper of paper and memory, and beside her, Olivia leaned in, their shoulders pressed gently together on the couch. Laughter bubbled from them both as they landed on a photo of Olivia at 10, sticking her tongue out mid-pie eating contest, whipped cream across her nose. The next was Margaret asleep during a movie night, mouth open, a bowl of popcorn balanced precariously on her chest. "Oh no," Olivia giggled. "That one's a classic." "She'll murder us if we frame it," Elaine said, though her grin deepened. The house smelled of cinnamon and something faintly citrusy from the candle burning nearby. In the kitchen, a small chocolate cake waited under a glass dome. No occasion, just a Tuesday. And that was exactly how Elaine wanted it. No spectacle, no songs sung off key. Just quiet. Earned joy. The front door creaked open, and Margaret shuffled in without knocking, as usual. "I brought wine," she declared, holding up a bottle and kicking the door shut with one foot. And I want cake. Samuel followed behind her, ever polished, a small gift bag in his hand. Elaine raised an eyebrow. You people do know my birthday was weeks ago, right? This isn't about birthdays, Margaret said, flopping into the armchair with a dramatic sigh. This is about victory. And pie. And legacy. Samuel handed Elaine the bag. It's a candle, he said, handmade. No label, no gimmicks, just wax and wick. You get to decide what it means. Elaine opened the bag slowly. Inside, wrapped in crinkled paper, was a single ivory candle in a simple glass jar. No words, no scent, just possibility. Seems fitting, she said. They gathered around the table, lit the candle, and cut the cake. No one sang. Instead, Olivia raised a plastic cup of lemonade. To new memories, she said, and to the woman who taught me how to make them count. To Elaine, Margaret added, clinking her glass. To silence used as strength, Samuel said, and then raised his eyes to meet Elaine's. And to every decision that led us here. Elaine looked around the table. These weren't just her protectors. They were her chosen people, each one a wall that had stood when her own blood tried to dismantle her foundation. She reached for the candle and held it gently. You've got decades more wishes, Margaret said, voice softer now. Elaine smiled. And all of them safe, Samuel added. The flame flickered, reflecting in her glasses. Elaine leaned forward, breath held, not because it was tradition, but because it meant something now. A wish was no longer a desperate hope cast into a void. It was a declaration. She exhaled. The flame went out. The room dimmed for half a heartbeat, and then Olivia lit the side lamp, bathing them in soft yellow light again. Elaine didn't say her wish aloud. She didn't have to. She felt it settle in the room, peace. Not the fragile kind that cracks under footsteps, but the kind that stays even when the wind howls. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes had been stacked neatly in the sink, Elaine sat alone at the kitchen table, candlewick blackened but still warm. She picked up the notebook, the one that had started it all, and ran her fingers over the cover. It was nearly full now, not with revenge, but with truth. Names, dates, actions, choices. The final page was blank. She uncapped her pen and wrote, August 31st, 8:23 p.m. Final wish made, candle extinguished, legacy protected. She closed the notebook and slid it back into the drawer. From the living room, Olivia's laughter drifted in from a show, playing softly. Life wasn't dramatic anymore, and that was the point. Elaine stood, stretched, and turned out the kitchen light. Her daughter had mocked, "Make a wish if you live that long." So she wished her out of her will and blew out the candle.